DarkEcho production. Some stories are forgotten, others refuse to stay buried. Blackwater Lake, Episode 1, The Woman in the Water. There are places people visit every summer. Beautiful places, quiet places, places where families fish, where children laugh, and where friends make memories. Blackwater Lake looked like one of those places, but if you ask the people who live nearby, they'll tell you something different. They'll tell you the lake has always been there, long before the cabins, long before the roads, long before anyone gave it a name. And they'll tell you there is one rule that everyone raised near Blackwater Lake knows by heart. Never look too long into the water. Most people laugh when they hear it. These 5 friends laughed too, and that was their first mistake. Tyler was the one who planned the trip. He found the cabin online late one night while searching for somewhere quiet and far away from the city. The photographs looked perfect. A 2-story cabin surrounded by tall pine trees, a private dock, a stone fire pit, and a beautiful lake stretching all the way to the mountains. Tyler sent the listing to his 4 closest friends, Alyssa, Mia, Nolan, and Jacob. Within an hour, everyone agreed. 3 nights, no work, no responsibilities, no cell phones unless absolutely necessary. Just 5 friends getting away from everything. The drive took nearly 4 hours. At first, the highway was crowded. Then the buildings disappeared, the traffic thinned, and the road narrowed until there was nothing around them but trees. Tall trees, dark trees, growing so close to the road that their branches nearly touched above the vehicles. Alyssa sat beside the window, recording the scenery. She always carried a camera, not because she wanted attention, not because she needed perfect pictures. She simply hated the thought of forgetting things. Good trips, good people, small moments that seemed unimportant until years later. She wanted to remember all of it. As the road curved through the forest, the trees briefly opened, and for the first time, they saw the lake, Blackwater Lake. Alyssa lowered the camera. The name suddenly made sense. The water wasn't actually black, but beneath the afternoon sky, it looked darker than any lake she had ever seen. Smooth, deep, and completely still. The trees moved in the wind. Their branches swayed. Grass bent along the roadside, but the surface of the lake never moved, not even a ripple. Mia leaned forward. "Is that it?" Tyler smiled. "That's it." Jacob looked toward the water. "Kind of creepy." Nolan laughed. "It's a lake," but Alyssa kept watching it. There was something strange about the reflection. The mountains appeared clearly, the clouds, the trees, everything above the water appeared again beneath it, except their vehicles. Alyssa looked down at her camera screen. She could see the road, the trees, the lake, but in the water's reflection, the vehicles were missing. She blinked, adjusted the angle, and looked again. This time, their reflections were there, all 3 vehicles moving along the road. Alyssa lowered the camera. She told herself it had been the angle, nothing more. 10 minutes later, they reached the cabin. It stood only a short distance from the shoreline. Warm wooden walls, large windows, a wide porch facing the lake, a narrow dock reaching into the water. It was beautiful, more beautiful than the photographs online. Mia stepped out first. She stretched, looked toward the cabin, and smiled. "Okay, Tyler, you did good." Tyler laughed. "I always do." For the next hour, they carried bags inside, filled the refrigerator, claimed bedrooms, opened drinks, and played music loud enough to echo across the water. The cabin wasn't abandoned. It wasn't falling apart. It had been renovated recently. Clean wooden floors, bright walls, modern furniture. Everything felt comfortable, almost new, except for one thing. Above the stone fireplace hung an enormous antique mirror. Its dark wooden frame was carved with twisting vines and small shapes that looked almost like faces. Alyssa stood in front of it. The old glass distorted the room slightly, making the hallway behind her appear longer than it really was. She raised her camera and took a picture. Flash. For a brief moment, the room reflected clearly. Alyssa, the furniture, the hallway, and someone standing at the far end of it. She lowered the camera and turned around. The hallway was empty. Alyssa looked back at the photograph. The figure was gone. Only darkness remained at the end of the hall. Mia entered the room, carrying 2 bags. What are you staring at? Alyssa locked the camera screen. Nothing. She forced a smile. Just an old mirror. By late afternoon, everyone was outside. Tyler and Jacob carried kayaks toward the shoreline. Mia spread towels across the dock. Nolan opened the cooler, and Alyssa stood close to the water, taking pictures of the cabin. The lake was clear near the shore. She could see smooth stones beneath the surface, then weeds, then darkness. Only a few feet from land, the bottom seemed to disappear. Nolan picked up a flat stone. Watch this. He threw it across the lake. The stone skipped once, twice, 3 times, 4. Then it vanished. No splash, no ripple, nothing. The water simply swallowed it. Nolan frowned. Did anybody else see that? Tyler barely looked up. It sank. Rocks usually splash. Jacob laughed. Maybe you found a magic rock. Everyone moved on, but Alyssa remained near the shoreline, watching the place where the stone had disappeared. The surface stayed perfectly still. Then, far beneath the water, something pale slowly passed beneath her reflection. Alyssa stepped backward. The pale shape stopped, directly beneath her. She stared down, trying to understand what she was seeing. Then the water moved. Just once, a single ripple spread outward from her reflection, and from somewhere behind her, Tyler called her name. Alyssa turned away. When she looked back, the pale shape was gone. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly, too quietly. Tyler and Jacob spent nearly an hour trying to catch fish from the dock. They didn't catch a single one, not even a bite. Jacob finally laughed. I don't think there are any fish in this lake. Tyler smiled. There has to be. There has to be something. Alyssa looked toward the water. She wasn't so sure. She had visited lakes before. Every lake felt alive. You heard birds, you heard frogs, sometimes turtles, sometimes insects buzzing across the surface. Blackwater Lake had none of those things, only silence, the kind of silence that makes you notice your own breathing. As evening approached, clouds slowly covered the sun. The wind became cooler. The trees began to sway. Pine needles drifted through the air, but the lake remained perfectly smooth, not a single ripple. Mia finally pointed it out. Has anybody noticed? The water never moves? Everyone looked. She was right. The branches above them were dancing in the wind. The flag near the dock snapped back and forth. Even loose leaves were blowing across the porch, but the lake looked like polished glass. Jacob picked up another stone. This should fix that. He threw it as hard as he could. The stone struck the surface. Everyone expected a splash. Instead, the rock skipped. Once, twice, 3 times. Then it disappeared. Again. No splash, no sound, only silence. Nobody laughed this time. Tyler slowly stood. Okay, that's weird. Alyssa never took her eyes off the water. For just a moment, she thought she saw small circles, not ripples, more like something slowly breathing beneath the surface. Then they vanished. As darkness settled, they lit the fire pit. Orange flames danced against the black water. The cabin glowed warmly behind them. Music played softly from a speaker. Someone opened another drink. Someone burned another marshmallow. For a little while, everything felt normal again. Tyler leaned back. I think this is exactly what we needed. Everyone agreed. Then Nolan stopped smiling. What? Mia asked. He didn't answer. He was staring across the lake, far beyond the dock, far beyond the trees reflected in the water. There, he pointed. Nobody spoke. Something was standing in the lake, too far away to see clearly, too still to be a person. It didn't move. It didn't wave. It simply stood there, waist deep, facing the cabin. Jacob squinted. Is somebody fishing? Tyler shook his head. At this hour? Alyssa slowly reached for her camera. Before she could lift it, lightning flashed, far beyond the mountains. For less than a second, the entire lake turned white. The figure was gone. The darkness returned. The lake was empty. Nobody said anything, not because they weren't frightened, because each of them was waiting for someone else to explain what they had just seen. No one did. That night, Alyssa couldn't sleep, not because she was scared, because something felt wrong. Not outside, inside the cabin. She opened her bedroom door. The hallway was empty. Moonlight spilled through the windows. Everything looked peaceful. She walked downstairs, poured herself a glass of water. As she stood in the kitchen, she noticed something. The antique mirror above the fireplace. It reflected the living room perfectly. The couch, the coffee table, the staircase, everything except the front door. In the reflection, the front door was open. In reality, it was closed. Alyssa slowly turned. The real door hadn't moved. She looked back into the mirror. Now, the reflected door was closed too. Alyssa stood perfectly still. For several long seconds, she couldn't remember which version she had seen first. She quietly finished her water, turned off the kitchen light, and walked back upstairs. The mirror remained, watching the empty room. Then, very slowly, a single drop of water slid down the center of the glass. From the inside, sleep never came easily for Alyssa. Not that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the lake, perfectly still, perfectly black. At a little after 2 in the morning, she finally gave up. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Mia. The hallway was quiet. The cabin felt different now, just empty. She walked downstairs. Every floorboard creaked softly beneath her feet. The fire had burned itself out. Only gray ash remained. Moonlight poured through the large windows, covering the living room in pale silver light. The antique mirror still hung above the fireplace. Alyssa looked at it, only for a second. Her reflection looked back. Normal. She kept walking, unlocked the front door, and stepped outside. The night air was colder than she expected. The forest stood completely still. No wind, no crickets, no frogs, nothing. Only the lake. Waiting. She walked slowly toward the dock. Each wooden plank groaned beneath her weight. She reached the end, sat down, pulled her knees against her chest, and stared across the water. It was beautiful. The moon reflected perfectly. The stars looked brighter in the lake than they did in the sky. Alyssa smiled. "I've been freaking myself out," she whispered. "It's just a lake." She laughed quietly. No one answered. Minutes passed. The water never moved. She leaned forward, studying her own reflection. The moon, the trees, her face, everything looked perfect. She tilted her head slightly. Her reflection didn't. Alyssa frowned. Maybe she hadn't noticed correctly. She tilted her head again, slowly. This time, her reflection followed. She laughed nervously. "Okay, I'm definitely tired." She looked away, then looked back. The reflection was already waiting, looking directly at her. Alyssa stopped breathing. She didn't move. Neither did the reflection. Then, very slowly, the reflected version of Alyssa began smiling. Alyssa wasn't smiling. She stumbled backward. The movement startled her. One foot slipped off the edge of the dock, then the other. The cold water swallowed her instantly. The shock stole her breath. She reached upward, trying to grab the dock. The lake was silent, too silent. She opened her eyes. Green darkness surrounded her. Moonlight shimmered above. Then she saw them. Feet, standing on the bottom of the lake. Bare feet, dozens of them, perfectly still. She couldn't see their faces, only their legs disappearing into the darkness above, as if an entire crowd was standing beneath the lake, watching. A hand grabbed her jacket. Tyler. He pulled her onto the dock. She collapsed, gasping for air. "What happened?" Tyler asked. Alyssa couldn't answer. She kept staring at the water. "It's okay," Tyler said. "You just slipped." Did she? Alyssa wasn't sure anymore. Back inside, everyone woke up. Blankets, hot coffee, dry clothes. Tyler joked that the lake had almost claimed another victim. Nobody laughed. Alyssa finally looked toward the fireplace. The antique mirror reflected the room. Tyler, Jacob, Mia, Nolan, Alyssa. 5 friends. She counted again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then, without warning, every reflection looked toward her. Not one after another, all at once. Only for a heartbeat. Then everything returned to normal. Nobody else reacted. Nobody else noticed. Alyssa said nothing, because she wasn't sure it had happened at all. Outside, Blackwater Lake remained perfectly still, as if it had never been disturbed. Morning arrived, gray and quiet. No one mentioned what had happened the night before. Not because they forgot, because nobody wanted to be the first to talk about it. Breakfast was quieter than the morning before. Tyler still joked. Jacob still smiled. But the laughter never lasted very long. Even the music felt too loud. Finally, Tyler looked around the table. "I think we should head home." Nobody argued. Within an hour, the vehicles were packed. Doors were locked. The fire pit was covered. The cabin looked exactly the way it had when they arrived. Beautiful, peaceful, almost inviting. Alyssa stood alone at the end of the dock. One last time, she looked across Blackwater Lake. The water was perfectly still. No woman, no reflections, nothing. She smiled. Maybe they really had imagined everything. She climbed into Tyler's SUV. The engine started. Gravel crunched beneath the tires. Slowly, the cabin disappeared behind the trees. Nobody looked back. The drive home felt much shorter. Conversation slowly returned. Music played. People laughed again. Life felt normal. By sunset, everyone was home. Tyler unpacked. Jacob ordered pizza. Mia called her sister. Nolan turned on a football game. And Alyssa downloaded the photographs from her camera. One by one, they appeared on the screen. The cabin, the dock, the kayaks, the campfire, the mountains. Every photograph looked perfect, until the final one. The last picture was taken that morning, just before they left. All 5 friends stood together at the end of the dock, smiling. Alyssa zoomed in. Everything looked normal. Then she noticed something. The reflection in the lake. It wasn't reflecting the 5 of them. It reflected 6. Alyssa leaned closer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And another figure standing perfectly still between Tyler and herself. Its face was hidden beneath long, wet hair. Alyssa felt a chill run through her body. She looked at the original photograph on the camera screen. 5 people. She looked at the enlarged image. 6 reflections. She blinked. The 6th reflection was gone. Only 5 remained. Alyssa slowly sat back. "I'm tired." She closed the laptop, turned off the living room light, and walked toward her bedroom. The screen behind her went black. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then, the laptop screen turned itself back on. The same photograph filled the display. Only now, the 6th reflection was standing outside the lake, on the dock, looking directly at the camera.